The following is a presentation of the Black Hollywood Live Network, the first online broadcast network dedicated to African American entertainment. Hollywood Redefined. From Los Angeles, California, streaming live thanks to Akamai Technologies, this is Black Hollywood Live, the Black Tea Party, featuring weekly discussions on political news and current affairs. Black Hollywood Live, Hollywood Redefined.
You're listening to Black Hollywood Live.
And now, the host of Black Hollywood Live, the Black Tea Party.
Aw, this song. I love it. I love it. Hey guys, it's your host Stacy here at Black Tea Party. I am so excited to be here with my favorites. And you're new, but you're not new.
You say that to everybody. I know you do.
No.
Everyone's your favorite.
Cut. But everyone is my favorite because everyone's amazing. So introduce yourself, hun.
Hi, I'm Julian Dujarric. You can reach me at Julian Dujarric everywhere, social, everywhere. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of it.
Yeah, I love it. And you guys can check me out on Twitter and Instagram at OneTakeStace, like you have been doing. You're amazing. Keep in touch with me online. We love it. So this was a political week.
Yeah.
Like usual.
Very much. In between episodes of Scandal, I had to sneak in some politics.
Right.
Different show though. Different show.
We're not.
Don't
even let me get in. Don't even let me get involved because I will. I'll go there. Yeah. But anyway. So how do we segue? I guess the main thing is just the interesting. We have the debate. We have. I love the topic that you brought up about religion and politics and how that is now being drenched together and sorry you guys, I'm trying to get my camera right. Being all drenched together, and I love the statistics that you sent over, and I kind of study them, and now that I'm thinking, wow, I was a little surprised with what's going on and how people see religion and politics and how they see that their next president, whether they're religious or not, or how they, if that sways their opinion on who they want to vote for or not. So I don't know, what do you think?
It actually didn't surprise me because I have this sneaking suspicion that the more time goes by, the more people start to, I don't want to say abandon religion, but sort of their views on life evolve, and subsequently their views on religion evolve. So it didn't surprise me. But you're referring to the Pew Research study that says how religion is shaping the 2016 presidential race, and I'll get a little personal. I grew up very religious, and now I'm a little more spiritual. But I think it definitely speaks to sort of how people are. I would say how people are realizing or evolving on their views on a lot of things that are sort of incongruent with how they're raised or what their family believes. And I think it's very interesting. I'm trying to load up the number here, but I think it's very interesting that the number was as high. I think it was like almost 2/3. I'll get the exact number in a second, but I thought that was fascinating to me.
Yeah, well,
because we are such a religious country, right?
Yeah,
we're founded upon Judeo-Christian values and the Abrahamic religion.
Well, I was raised Christian. I'm still a Christian, and I thought, I kind of look at these statistics, and I was like, I'm going to call my mom and dad. I want to see if this affects them in any way, and I feel like they kind of play the fence when it comes to like who they vote for, because they kind of vote for like what's important at the time. I feel, at least that's what I got, because I don't know, I couldn't really tell, but they did say that it was important for them, for the leader of the country to be, have some type of religious values. They said that it was very important to them. So, and for me, I think until I saw this, I kind of didn't even realize that some of these candidates didn't have religious values, because I am so used to that, having the leader having religious values and being open about it, and kind of opening speeches with that and things like that. So I realized after reading that, and kind of after what I've seen the past 8 years, or I guess since we've been really paying attention, I think it's important to me. I don't know how it affects the candidates we have now, though, because Clinton doesn't really seem to be as religious. Trump didn't seem to be as religious,
Well, they both...
Carson was the most, it seemed.
Right. Well, they both, all three of them have talked about how they are very religious, and they practice their religion in the way that they do, each distinctly. But I have a question. You said that that's something that's really important to you in a presidential candidate and in a president.
Yeah, I think so.
Meaning you would like those Judeo-Christian values to influence their decision making?
I think it's just important for me to maybe for them to have a background in something, in some type of spirituality or something. You know what I mean?
Because it provides a moral compass.
Yes.
Okay.
That's exactly what I was trying to say. I think it just provides something that, a moral compass that I might be more familiar with, because it's not that all religions, or let's just say, if I'm a Christian and let's say a presidential candidate's a Christian, it's not that we necessarily have the exact same views on life, because that's not true. A lot of things are shaped by your experience, as well as maybe religion or whatever the case is. But I think it still provides some type of like path that I would be familiar with or understand or whatever the case is. So yeah, I think it's interesting because now that we say that, now that I'm even saying that, all religious people, especially maybe like my Christian friends or friends that I know that are Christian, we don't share a lot of the same beliefs in terms of like maybe politics or people we'd vote for. Just because we have the umbrella of an understanding, we still have a lot of different ways of going about life. So I don't know if that would affect the way that these presidential candidates, like, how they would operate. Just because somebody is of a faith that I am doesn't mean that they would do what I would do, or they would pass a law that I would understand, or I don't know. It's interesting.
I think that's interesting because everything basically is under the umbrella of Christianity in this country. I mean, the president swears on a Bible when he's being sworn in, so regardless of whether or not he's Christian or not. So if you think about it,
that's really true. Yeah.
In God we trust is on every single dollar.
All right. In God I really do trust y'all. Because anyway, that's a whole nother story.
But I come into an issue when I feel like there should be a separation of church and state, and I feel like sometimes, and I won't go into specifics, I'm trying to be very busy. I feel like sometimes certain candidates or certain past presidential presidents, some of them have not been so presidential, past presidents have used religion as sort of a carte blanche to enact policies or to promote policies that are not what the majority or even all of what the country agrees with or views. And I find that it can be a slippery slope.
It is. I mean, they say separation of church and state, but is that even possible? Well, I've never really understood that.
It's so tied to the fabric of who you are.
How the hell can it not be?
Yeah.
I mean, you're raised in a certain belief system in a sense, and then you're supposed to say, okay, well, that doesn't affect how I think about the world, how I think about politics, so I'm going to vote for it. I don't even... I mean, in terms of the way you said evolving, sure, you get a little bit more, I don't know if the word is liberal or not, or if it's just you get a little bit more open-minded in terms of the separation, but I just think it's impossible to say like, oh, one doesn't directly affect the other. I don't know.
Well, if we talk about something like abortion, I mean, that's not something that's really contentious. Yeah. It's a contentious debate. Yeah. And, there's obviously on one side saying that the government has no reason or right to tell a woman or anybody really what to do with their own body. Yeah. And then on the other side, largely due to religious beliefs, there's a segment of the population and a certain segment of political ideology that acts in accordance to their religious beliefs. So, is it for sure direct? Because I've always wondered with that. It's easier to say that it's directly linked to religious beliefs because that's what the people who maybe are protesting are saying. We're this, so we don't believe this. But it's like, I don't really know where that's in the Bible. Like I don't. It's considered murder.
It's considered murder. I know, but I'm just saying. I think that's always been something I've really struggled with, just because I am a woman, and so you see it in one perspective, and then you see it in the other perspective. Like, this could have been you, this could have been your mom, this could have been, anybody. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I think with that, this is so tough. Yeah. Well, you have here's another example. Okay, so something that's a little more clear. George Bush has been on record. Actually, before I say that, I'm just going to make sure. I know that I'm going to look into this, but there have been presidents that have gone to war because they have said that they have been inspired by the divine. And I want to say that he's on record, George W. Bush is on record saying that God told him that was the right decision to make. So
for me,
You're like,
that's the slippery slope. It's like, God told you to do that?
Okay, but what if God really told him though? I don't know. I'm playing devil's advocate because it's just, wow, I don't know. I really don't know. But let's just say, what if he believes that and you're like, okay, wait, but we don't believe that as a nation? Is that kind of the...
Yeah, but separation of church and state, even if God told him to do something, he's the president of the United States before he's a Christian. So he should be listening to what he thinks, not what some other being, whether you believe it's true or not, told him.
I don't think that's possible,
Stephen
though,
Lemieux,
because...
by the way. He's our
sorry,
engineer.
that's our producer.
That's our producer.
Chiming in. I just, like I said, I don't necessarily think it's possible to separate, like, who you are from what you believe. Like, you are what you believe in a sense.
But you're in news. You know how to produce news stories without injecting your opinion, right?
Damn, that's true. Okay. I mean, I have
definitely, and I have a background in news too, and so I find myself. I'm sure you find yourself too sometimes writing scripts like, I just want to tell this person off, but you can't.
That's very true
because you have a responsibility. I'm not equating journalism with the presidency. I mean, obviously, there's more responsibility in the latter.
That was a kind of a comparable situation that I now I can kind of see where he is. That's interesting, huh?
So I wonder, I would like to ask any president, really, I'd like to ask Obama, because he's a Christian. How has there been an example of a policy or some action that he's taken that has been incongruent with his religious beliefs, and how does he feel about that?
That's so interesting.
How do presidents reconcile what they believe with what's good for the rest of the country?
I mean, okay, now to bring it down to something maybe how do journalists do it? Not that that's comparable, but in a sense, like if you're telling a story and you innately do not believe it, how?
I think you try to inject as much facts as possible.
Right.
You don't want to... I think it's a little... that's why I didn't want to compare it too much, because I think with journalism, like your responsibility is to tell the truth and to tell facts.
Right.
And so, you may feel a certain way about the facts, but you can't. They're still facts.
Right. Right. That's interesting.
There's so much gray area when it comes to being the commander in chief. It's like, and that's why they're so highly criticized.
Yeah.
And that's why we expect them to be the smartest people in the country, because there's a lot that could go wrong, depending on what decisions you make.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think again with the statistics that you showed, it was so interesting, because I think there's this kind of like general consensus, at least that I feel, that Ben Carson isn't necessarily a good candidate for presidency. Okay, and this is me calling my parents.
Based on what?
No, just like based on personality and like how he's been doing in the polls and that kind of thing.
He's not charismatic.
Right. He's not like the go-to guy in a sense. And then I was kind of looking at the statistics, and they were trying to say that they were trying to like say it was about, it didn't matter that he was a Christian because that doesn't make him a good candidate. But I was like, it doesn't matter that he's a Christian. He's not a good candidate because he's not a good candidate. You know what I mean? So I was trying to figure out, like, is it just about religion, or are we still letting all those other pieces play into it? Religion may not be the thing that pushes you over the edge and decides, like, you know what, I was toying between these two, but this one loves God more and this one believes in Allah or whatever, and I'm going to vote for that one. I don't really think
it's about having, I think it's about compartmentalizing.
Right.
And I can't imagine, and again, this is me trying to be very PC.
Okay.
Just in case NBC calls and be like, we need a political reporter. Just kidding. I can't imagine.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine someone being elected president right now who is an atheist, or who is agnostic, who doesn't believe in God or doesn't believe in religion, in the same breath that I cannot imagine someone ascending to the presidency who does not believe in evolution, which Ben Carson has
said he does not.
Well, I wish I had the clip.
I'm like, I would love to play it. I remember when well, I would agree with the first part of that for sure, because I think, we saw statistics and just kind of the way the world is. I think, yes, we are very, I like the word to use, we're evolving in a certain way. And I don't think, to me, I'm not going to take the word evolving and say like we're going away from Christianity or religion or any of that, because I think I'm just kind of talking about me now. But in general, I think it is interesting that if you say, okay, we've evolved, so can anyone, regardless of race or gender or religious status, go there? No, there's still we're just fighting like okay, a woman. By the time we get to atheist, I think you and I might be dead. Like, I don't.
You think so?
Yeah, I do. I mean, maybe not. The way the world's going, I don't know. I mean, we are opening our minds to different ideas and different perspectives.
I think
But
I would have agreed with you had I not done. By the way, I'm going to plug an interview I did this morning with a guy named Zoltan Isfan, who is running for president. He's not going to win. He admits it. But he is running with the Transhumanist Party, which believes that science, technology, and health should be at the forefront of American politics. And so he has a lot of interesting ideas, which you guys should check out. But one of the things that he said was that because of the advent of technology and the growth of technology exponentially, right? It's growing faster than anyone could have predicted. People are being more and more open-minded, and again, we're going to use the E word, are evolving on their views on things. And he thinks that a paradigm shift will happen within the next decade, as soon as like 10 years, technologically speaking. So if, I think I tend to agree with him only because, he makes a good point that in the last 10 years, you would never think that gay marriage would be legal in this country. You'd never think that, I don't know, marijuana would be legal in any state. You'd never think that some of these socially contentious issues would be where they are now. And so that was something he said, and that's something I kind of agree with. So I think it might happen sooner than we think. I mean, who thought 20 years ago or 10 years ago, who thought that Barack Obama would be a black man as the president of the United States? What?
Well, do we feel like, and I don't know, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this question. Do we feel like once a religion gets out, there'll be more clarity? Is that kind of...
Do I feel that way?
I don't know. I don't know if I'm trying to ask you or is there a feeling of?
A feeling of religion
being in the way of politics in a sense?
I think there's a growing sense of that sentiment, that religion really just clouds judgment.
I can't.
I mean, it can.
I'm not saying it can't, but I'm saying like it's crazy to say like somebody should be. I mean, it just I guess for me, having a fundamental belief is the only reason I'm the person I am.
Right.
There's no way in hell I'd be anybody else if I didn't have what I had or believed what I believed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just think it's interesting if we decide to say that somebody, I mean, I don't know if we'll get to this point, but we say somebody's maybe even more qualified because there's nothing clouding their judgment in a sense. Like, I feel like that's what we try to say. And I'm like, that's crazy to me.
Well, I think absolutism in any form, like whether you're, because there's good and bad in every religion.
Right.
I mean, if you're Muslim, that you can take anything from the Quran and interpret it to be a good thing or a bad thing, to enact, forces of good or, perpetuate evil, just like Christianity, just like Buddhism, just like, all of the religions. And so I think absolutism in any form, some of the worst dictators in the world were atheists. Some of the worst dictators in the world were Christian. I mean, the guy who perpetuated some of the worst atrocities against the Jewish people, was
claimed to.
Yeah. So I think the problem runs in fundamentalism and having that be sort of the overall guiding principle of every single decision you make, without any nuance, without taking into consideration the world, the year that you live in.
So it's just like, if you're the president, you have to, because for me,
because you're not just the president of Christians, you're the president of atheists, you're the president of Jewish
just like
people.
Barack Obama's not the president of black people.
You're the president of everybody.
I get that. I definitely get that. I think it's just interesting. I don't know. It's kind of like, okay, so when you get to the presidency, you need to like shift around what's important. Because for me, just the sentence you just said about like guiding every decision, I'm like, well, that's how I make all my decisions. So if I want to be president, I'm like, you can't do that anymore. It's just very interesting, because like I said, based on like the statistics and what we were reading, people really are, some things just aren't important to them anymore, or some things aren't as important anymore. And so it's not a problem that people are like, well, it doesn't bother me if you believe something different than me. I think that's not a problem. I think it's just, it would be sad if somebody's like, well, I'd rather you not believe in anything, in a sense, for you to be qualified or something like that.
You think people do you think people believe that?
I would hope not, but I'm saying, like, if we got to that point, I would think that's kind of sad.
I think, and I'll just say let's go back and forth. I'll start. What I want in a president is someone who has judgment, who's smart, who knows what's happening around the world, and doesn't necessarily have the feeling that he can solve all of the problems. I would like for him to have people even smarter than him surrounding him.
I like that. I like that.
Because if I were president, I'd be crapping my pants every day that I'm in charge of the largest military in the world, and I yield all this power. So I would want people smarter than me to tell me what to do with it.
Yeah.
And so religion really isn't that important to me. As long as your moral compass is pointed in the right direction. And
how do you know it's the right direction? How do we know?
I mean, I think it's pretty easy to tell when you hear people on the campaign trail saying that they want to do a no-fly zone over Syria and bomb the crap out of that country. And, that to me doesn't seem...
like your moral compass isn't right.
It doesn't seem very pious, right? It seems to me, just to me, as if that's the opposite of what Jesus wanted, the opposite of what God mandates for humanity.
Yeah.
So I think to answer your question, I think, I think you can tell, and I think there are other factors that I think
that right there, I agree, because I don't think, right now we're specifically focusing on religion and how it affects a president or whatever the case is. But I do think there are other factors. I mean, I don't think God's like, hey, I mean, he also gives us wisdom, in my opinion. So he gives us wisdom, and that is people like smarter than you around you, or, direction, or the right team, or whatever the case is. There are other factors into becoming the president that is, I guess, qualified to run the nation.
But then it becomes an echo chamber. If you have Christians surrounding you or just Muslims surrounding you, you are only hearing one point of view. I would like to see a cabinet full of various different people from various different religions, and backgrounds and views.
I hate the word diversity sometimes, but I think what you're like, how to sum up what you're kind of saying is, if there was a cabinet that was full of diverse, and I'm not talking about black and white people, there are other people in the world.
Yeah, there are other categories.
There's so many other people in the world, and there's so many things that people bring to the table that is so important, and I think that's the most important thing I would look for in a presidency, somebody who's smart enough, or has the wisdom to include everyone in the conversation.
Why not have a Muslim Secretary of State? That seems to be a big. It's a big issue. It's a big part of what all of these candidates are running on is Middle East relations. So that's just an idea. Why not have someone who at least understands that world and can provide a perspective that that may humanize the folks in those countries, as opposed to just calling them the big bad terrorist over there and just keeping making a blanket statement.
So I don't know if this is the right time to transition, but I think so, just the way you said that. There was the article about the difference between the way the Democrats are approaching it and the way the Republicans are approaching, this. I don't know. I was just very irritated because I don't care who you are, Republican or Democratic or Democrat. It's so stupid for you to say, this whole group over here, they're a threat to us. Every single one of them. Every single Muslim is anti-American. That is stupid.
Because people believe that.
That is stupid. I'm going to tell you right now, it's stupid. Okay? It is inappropriate, and that is not the evolving
Muslims
we were talking
fight in
about.
the army. They're in the armed forces. They die for this country. They want to be free. It's insane to me.
It's so
and I know
tough.
this is something that we've talked about a lot on this campaign, but this election, but it's something that apparently is an issue for these candidates, and I'm not really religious. I don't subscribe to any sort of religious ideology, but I can't say with any authority that any one religion is worse than the other. And I don't feel as though it's becoming of someone who's running for president to make such blanketed statements.
Yeah, but the sad thing is, when they do make the statement and people are okay with it, and not only okay, but decide to subscribe to everything that they believe in because of that statement that triggered their fear and helped seal, bandage their little fear about, I think that, oh my God, he agrees with me, or he understands, or it's not just in my head, or whatever, ridiculous thought was going through your head when you decided to agree.
Validated.
Your views are validated. And that to me is why, like, I don't know. I don't want to, America right now, I feel like we're on this like weird divide, I guess. And there was a beautiful time where I felt like everyone around you believed in believed in each other, you know, and I think that separation is just it's so intense now, and it's so vivid. And now that, you know, reading an article like that and hearing that they're even struggling how to address the situation because, you know, they want to say what they really believe, but they're like, well,
who's they, Democrats or
was it okay? So Democrats are the one that were being a lot softer about it and saying like, hey, we shouldn't say everybody.
Republicans prefer blunt talk and Democrats favor caution.
Right.
So continue, sorry.
And no, it's okay. It's just crazy. And I don't know if people, do you see that as like, oh, were you surprised by that statistic saying that Republicans felt like we should be blunt about it and just say what we think, and then Republicans were trying to be a little bit more cautious? Did you feel like that was
Democrats
surprising?
were trying to be cautious?
I'm sorry, Democrats?
No.
Okay.
I mean, no. Of course not. I mean, you see the extreme right? The extreme far right of the party, of the Republican Party, kick out during a Donald Trump rally, for example, just a few weeks ago. This Muslim woman had a shirt on. I don't know what the shirt said, but it was enough to arouse some sort of, you know, contention there. She was doing a silent protest, and she was kicked out. She was kicked out just for standing up and saying nothing. And to me, it doesn't really surprise me. I tend to forget because I'm in a bubble. We're in Los Angeles, and I'm from the East Coast. You know, I'm a New York, New Jersey guy. So I've only ever lived in places where I've been exposed to a bunch of different backgrounds. To me, you know, I forget that there are people who are not exposed to that and that those views are validated when they hear someone, you know, of the pedigree, we'll say, of Donald Trump, because he is a successful businessman. He is, for all intents and purposes, the CEO of a very successful real estate company. So people see that. I said this the first time I was on here. When you seem confident in what you're talking about, and you have a list of accomplishments that back up those statements, regardless of how
they line up,
regardless of how like blown out of proportion they are, I'm trying to hyperbolic those statements are. People think you're smart and people trust you, and no, it doesn't surprise me. What I'm more surprised by is that the Democrats haven't. Well, I guess recently, I think what's surprising to me is that what I've seen is that the Democrats have kind of taken the lead, have followed the public's lead in terms of calling out Donald Trump and calling out, you know, anyone who's sort of talking all this anti-Muslim nonsense. And they weren't there sooner, but I also don't want to be nitpicky and say why weren't you there, because you know the fact of the matter is that the right is so I don't want to say the right, but there are members of that party right now that are perpetuating such an extreme message that any opposition is a welcome one.
Okay, so you realize why the attacks on Trump are usually not Islam based, and
they're political,
but the attacks that people do on Trump in the media are not because of his statements on Islam and things like that. Do you know why?
Because they're extreme.
It's because they don't want to open up that casket. They don't open the can of worms, because all Trump has to do is show them crime rates from Europe and crime rates from all these countries in the United Nations that have been taken over by religious factions of Islam and have instated Sharia law and have made the citizens afraid to speak out. Because I'm not saying that these are all Islamics, but the problem is that there's just like there are Christian places in here that are like fortified forts. This is terrifying. It's the same in Europe. But nobody wants to know about it, and Europe sure as hell doesn't want anyone talking about it. That's why they butter everything up and cover it up.
Nobody wants to know the extreme violence, is what you're saying? Like Islamic violence?
Nobody wants to...
Like knowing that it could be true? Is that...
No, not that it could be true, but just to the degree that the culture has taken over the government in Europe. Because if you really look at it from an individual level and look at the different areas of Europe, you look at London, you look at areas outside of London, you look at Ireland, you look at all these places that are in the EU, that are on the Euro, and they don't even have their own justice system anymore when it has to do with Islam, because the culture is so strong in its beliefs that it can hold itself up and it can create this really strong culture there. The problem is that the culture directly does not work with American culture, and that's where the difference is.
The culture or the religion?
the religious culture of Islam.
Okay. The religious, I'll tend to disagree with you only because I think it's almost running the risk of saying something a little blanketed because I'm
trying not to because I know that it's not a blanket statement, and it is different sections that have different things. It's like it's really tough to talk about.
It's a fringe, though. It's not. It's unfortunate that we have this Islamophobia that gets so much traction because it is a.
Because you could say a whole bunch of white people.
It's a small percentage. It's a small percentage.
Anything, you guys. You could say a whole bunch of white people have killed somebody this week, and all white people are bad. You could say a whole bunch of black people have killed. You could say anything. I don't understand why saying that is so much because what they don't live. Everybody doesn't live. I have so many Muslim friends that are born in America. You know what I mean? Like that are here. This is where they were raised, and they're still dealing with shit that I'm like. But that doesn't. I don't understand the umbrella. Well, I understand what you're saying, Stephen. I definitely get it, but I think it's still harsh that it's easier to do it to people who are of this culture and not people who are of any other culture.
Well, people have said that. That's happened in this country throughout history. I mean, after the Holocaust, like. Nazis were the big boogeyman, and so we weren't allowed. You couldn't bring any
paraphernalia.
Yeah.
Or so then let's just say, okay, let's have our white people moment then.
Who were affected by it. They were like no Jewish refugees either. So it's something. It's like ingrained in our culture. It's our cultural history, and it's unfortunate. And I think
the only reason Trump is doing so well in the polls is because he says crazy things and the media reports on it.
Right.
Because our country is full of 80%, I'd say probably a rough estimate, 80% people who have a little bit crazy beliefs themselves. They hear the stuff that most people think are crazy, and they tend to agree with it. And that's why they're like, oh, let's vote for Trump. It's the silent majority, the people who, honestly, if the media just stopped reporting on him, his votes would go completely down. Yeah. Because nobody would be hearing from him.
There's a direct correlation, and it's absolutely insane to me.
They're letting him be president. Yeah. I don't know why they're trying to act. And it's funny because then the next day they'll be like, how is this happening? Did you guys see what happened? It's like, because last night you were reporting on it. What are you talking about?
Well, I tend to think that I'm a little more cynical in that I feel like they have a political agenda. It's
every single news outlet?
Majority of them, yeah.
How did that happen? They had a meeting or something? Like how did that?
A coalition of channels.
I don't understand. I really want to know how that even happens because. Well,
look at the people that fund these media organizations, right? See, and I don't even want to go
now
into
I don't know if you're ready. Are you ready? Because they're going to come for you. Like, because these statistics, I'll be listening. I will have to learn from you.
Some of these, okay, so the majority of the information that we get in this country, they're controlled by, I believe, 6 different corporations. A very small number of mother companies control every news station, every cable outlet, every news paper. Everything that you see as far as news is concerned is controlled by a small minority of corporations, and it is in their best interest to have positive coverage or ongoing coverage of candidates that can legislate in their favor.
But do you think it's okay? So that is one. But I was thinking, like, isn't it just a money thing? Because that's what me and my dad were talking about. He was like, I mean, this country is Trump. Like when we were talking about the New Hampshire, and it was like Trump and Bernie Sanders. And just last year, I made a huge joke about how that is not going to happen. I mean, I was always kind of like, oh, I hope Bernie rises, but I just didn't know it was going to happen. And then same thing with Trump. That was kind of a joke. So now we see that these are these are potential candidates, and my dad was like, well, I think it's the see what the news is doing and blah, 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 but we didn't get as deep into saying who's running it. So it's interesting because we kind of agreed that it was a money thing. It's ratings, and he's doing the thing. He's just like Stephen said, he's an extremist. He talks about whatever. I wouldn't say he's extremist, but you know what I mean? Like he'll go for the punch, and that makes money. That takes time, that ratings. I mean, he's from Access Hollywood to CNN. I mean, he's hit every media outlet there is. So I thought that was a money thing, but you're saying
I think it's a little.
Hell no, it's about more than
I think it's a little more. I mean, I'm not saying that the media wants Donald Trump as the president, but I tend to not trust the corporate media structure too much anymore, only because, and consume news from every single letter: ABC, NBC, CBS, in addition to Al Jazeera and BBC and all of the ones that aren't, traditional media outlets here in this country. Just because I have to know, what everybody's saying.
Right.
But I tend to want to diversify my news coverage because I see the connections between the sponsors and the candidates. And so that's...
So what about people who lack your knowledge to do so? They are just they're going to be spoon-fed, and they're going to be walked right to the polls, and they're going to pick whatever they were told?
I'm hopeful, and a lot of people here, I'll just speak for myself. I'm hopeful that because the internet is ever present, it's omnipresent, people can, find, and there's a lot of BS on the internet too, but people will find the right sources, and people like you and I can educate people on, the things that are really happening, and sources that we have and that other people that have, taught us how to kind of diversify our perspective. That can be something that we can use to like educate other people. You can't. People are very strong like in their beliefs, and you can't force someone to believe something they're not ever going to believe in. But
you can't force them, but I think giving them the option, because I think some people don't even have other options. You know what I mean? Like, you were presented with this, maybe you were raised with certain belief, we are this and we are that, or whatever the case is, and you're not really exposed to it. And I think that's, the one thing that's cool about college. But of course, college is cool. But anyway, having that perspective and being around different people and learning about different things, it doesn't mean you necessarily have to change your beliefs by any means, but knowing what other people believe, and I think that's very important. So I think in cases like this, just saying what you said about being smart enough to see the correlation, I'm thinking about how many people I had a conversation with that didn't mention that at all. Yeah. And I saw it because we do media, but I was like, I'm not really sure what, I went to the money part of it because I'm like, well, that's what we do. It's all about the money, blah, blah, blah. And I, was saying that just the news isn't fed to us the way that it used to be. When I got into journalism in 2009, it's changed so much even since 2009. I'm sure it was, there was a huge wave before then, but from when I got in, it just seems so much more about the news. And it's only been a few years, and I just see this complete 180, I feel like.
But that's also, you're saying that based on the options that were presented to you at the time. So you don't really know if that is all about the news, essentially, because
if that was even the good stuff,
have
I never had the good stuff?
No, I'm sure you have. I mean, you're in journalism, you're in media, so I'm sure just by you being in this industry, you have a different perspective, and you look at headlines a little differently than the average person, as I do, and anybody else who follows the news in the way that we do. That we're a little more critical of it, so we have a more discerning eye. But for me, I will just say, I think it's important to diversify and engage with people that make you feel uncomfortable and that challenge your beliefs.
Yeah.
Because I'm friends with certain people that I think they're batshit crazy, and I think some of their beliefs are out of this world. But so I understand where they're coming from, and they have convinced me, and they've changed my views on certain things, and I've sort of gone from one side to the other, not on everything, but I see the change that's happened in me, and I've seen the more reasoned, nuanced way of thinking about things as a result of having friends and being around people who have ideas that are very different than me. And I feel like not a lot of people are willing to do that, because people get comfortable. They get comfortable in their beliefs, they get comfortable in their media, they get comfortable in every aspect of their lives, and they don't want to be uncomfortable.
Yeah. I know, it is important to be uncomfortable. It kind of sucks, I won't lie, because I think even being on like this show or learning from different people, I'm like, I wasn't even into politics as much as I've become into it. And so I think even some parts of it that, that we're learning about, it's like, oh my gosh, there's so much more to it than what meets the eye, I guess. So let's trickle down to our last topic, just talking about the debate right quick and kind of give a quick what we thought. Give me your thoughts. What did you think about the debate? How are you feeling? Do you have someone you're like, this is the front runner, or do you know? I don't know.
Well, coming off of the New Hampshire primaries and how close that was in terms of delegates.
It wasn't that close. Why are you trying to lie to them?
I'm not trying to lie. This is what Rolling Stone says. It's definitely getting more contentious. I mean, every debate has gotten more. I think they focused a lot more on women's issues. I mean, and it was honestly, I thought it was great to see 2 women moderators,
right.
2 female moderators up there, and a female candidate.
Wasn't that like a lot?
It's kind of like it was cool, right?
Snapping.
It was good to see that.
It just was diversified people. That's what we're talking about. So continue.
And there was a lot more contentious debate in terms of like actual policy and voting record. I thought it was. I'm excited to see more debates like that because I feel like at this point that should be the tone and that should be the general tone of a Democratic or a Republican debate, just to talk about the issues. And I feel like now we're starting to get into the nitty gritty
because we're closer to the real deal.
Like Hillary and Bernie were both talking numbers and saying that how their plans, I don't know the exact numbers. I think it was, I don't want to say without knowing the exact numbers, but they were talking numbers about how much these plans would cost and actually breaking down, what it would cost to get free education for all or affordable education for all and, affordable health care. And I was happy to see that.
Yeah. My nervousness when it comes to Hillary is I don't want people to pigeonhole her into you are about female, issues, as you want to say, because I kind of hated when they tried to do the same thing to Obama when it was like, are you about black issues? I was like, okay, this is what I don't understand about us. Like we see somebody and we're like, oh, they must only care about this. I loved hearing what she said about, equal pay and that kind of thing. She's allowed to say those ideas and be strong about them. But I was almost nervous. I was like, ooh, girl, don't be too strong because they'll think it's all about women. And that made me sad because I don't want to have to do that. I mean, I want her to be as strong as she is and have the tenacity about whatever issue she really cares about. That's awesome. And if Obama's like, listen, I want to make sure I'm helping black people, I wish it wasn't a problem. I wish I didn't see it the way I did, but I'm like, I don't want anybody to be boxed in. And I kind of felt that. I didn't feel she was boxed in at this time, but I felt like the articles I was reading, people were trying to say that.
Well, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you see it, I guess. I will speak for this country. Americans like to compartmentalize and put people in boxes, and they don't. There's a segment of the population. I'll say not all Americans. There's a segment of the population that cannot think outside of that box, and that is a loud segment. Yeah. So, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you see it.
Well, we shoot on Fridays if you want to come on. We can chat.
Yeah, that's how it is. But I think it's getting better, and I think with the advent of the growing movements of various different, like the LGBT movement and Black Lives Matter and like all of these and even Bernie Sanders' grassroots
The kids
movement.
love Bernie.
So, I think it's changing. I think it's sort of like a molasses. It takes some time and people have to kind of get out of it and grow and see things from like this elevated perspective as opposed to where they were before. But that's everybody. That's human nature.
Well, you guys, there's so much more to talk about, but unfortunately we have to wrap up.
We hammered the religion.
Yes,
really.
Sorry. There's so much to get into this week, and there's going to be more next week. But with that said, unfortunately, I will not be here next week. We had a little chat off of
Where are you gonna be?
Where am I gonna be? So I am actually moving on to another opportunity. I will tweet you guys about it later when it all gets finalized. But this is actually gonna be my last show on Black Tea Party. I will definitely come by and visit because I freaking love you guys so much, and I love that you guys have been with us for a year and a half now, I think. You're gonna love these people. They're great. So with that said, you guys, thanks so much for just being here and supporting me and staying tuned with everything. You guys can keep in touch with me on Twitter and Instagram at @OneTakeStace. I'll still be around, Black Hollywood Live, of course, but won't be on the show after this. So just want to say my goodbyes and thank you. So.
Well, the past few weeks have been great, like hosting with you. You're awesome, and
awesome.
I'll see you around the halls. We'll be
snapping.
We'll be snapping. You guys can follow me on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook at Julian Dujarric. I'll be here next week. Okay.
Okay.
Follow me all across the board on all social media at Julian Dujarric.
Yes, and huge shout out to Anthony and Don who are not here. We miss you. You're the bomb. You guys, we will see you next week. Well, I was like, oops.
Tiana Hobson and the entire BHL staff We would like to thank you for supporting Black Hollywood Live, the first online broadcast network dedicated to African American entertainment. For questions and comments, contact us. info@blackhollywoodlive.com. Like us on Facebook, tweet us, or Instagram us at BHL Online. And I am the official voice of Black Hollywood Live, Scipio. Instagram me @KingXOBay. Thanks for tuning in.
Hollywood Redefined.
The views expressed here are those of the host only and do not necessarily reflect the views of BHL or its owners or principals.